Good day, Internet. This is DTNS Live for Thursday, February 6th, 2025. From Studio Animal House, I'm Sarah Lane.
From Columbus, Ohio, I'm Robb Dunewood.
I'm the show's producer, Roger Chang.
Daily Tech News Show Live is made possible by its listeners thanks to all of you, including Jeffrey Zilks, Alo, Adam L., and Tony Glass.
Yeah, thanks to everybody for supporting us, and you support us every single day. That's why we keep showing up. Speaking of, welcome to DTNS Live. This is the show where we discuss the tech news to help us all understand the tech news and what might be going on behind the scenes a little bit better together. Robb Dunewood, how are you today?
I am doing quite well today. It's not
Really?
too cold. It's wintertime, but it's not like 6. It's probably in the low 40s. I'm doing fine. I'm not complaining.
You're doing good. You're doing good. Did you have a donut this morning?
I did not have a donut.
Okay, the reason I ask is because I did, which is unusual. On a Thursday morning, I don't usually get donuts, but I had to take my dog to the vet, and there's this donut shop on the way back, and I thought, you know what? To heck with it. Let's get donuts this morning, and it was fun.
Did you get a dozen?
I did not. Oh, my gosh. Me with a dozen donuts, bad story. I would have been like, guys, I have this horrible headache. I can't do the show. But no, just a cinnamon roll, and it was delicious, and I was happy. What about you,
I had a
Roger?
Pop-Tart, if that can't. Well, that's a
Pop-Tart?
pastry. It's a Pop-Tart.
Yeah, we're in the same genus.
Are you Pop-Tart frosted or Pop-Tart plain?
Oh, frosted.
I can't
Would
stand
have a
frosted.
plain one.
If I want to eat
No, I only
a
like
Pop-Tart, I
plain
want all the sugar.
Pop-Tarts.
Yeah, I want all the sugar.
Too much sugar makes me go loopy.
Well, same, but if you're going to have a Pop-Tart, I didn't even realize there were unfrosted Pop-Tarts. Granted, it's been a while since I had one. I thought they all were frosted.
It's for the health conscious Pop-Tart. You gotta
Oh, right, yeah. The organic Pop-Tart. Yeah, the non-GMO Pop-Tart. No thanks. Not today. What about you, Roger? No donuts, I assume.
No donuts. What did I have? I had yogurt, granola, and blueberries.
That sounds good.
Supposedly it's healthy.
I had the same breakfast I had, it was post cinnamon roll, but same breakfast I had yesterday, which is all just a big bowl
Steak
of
and
probiotics.
Oh.
Yeah. So tummy's doing a little rumble, but I figure, I don't know. Probiotics are killing bad things in this.
Probiotics are one of those marketing terms that just means like it just has live cultures in what you're eating. Isn't
Pretty
that what
much.
it means?
Well, there, yeah. I mean, we can go into this, which we're here for tech after all. But yeah, yogurt is one. But then there's like different strains of probiotics. Anyway, it gets very complicated. But I'm sure that there are companies selling things that I don't need to be paying for. But anyway, it was good. It was good. Second breakfast. All right, we are here for tech news. So let's check out the news.
Mistral develops large language models like Mistral Large and multimodal model Pixtral Large. Thursday, it launched a mobile app for its AI assistant Lead Chat on iOS and Android, along with a $14.99 per month pro tier for access to its highest performing model and more privacy controls. Lead Chat offers fast responses, advanced image generation, and an enterprise solution for industries looking for on-premise AI development.
According to new data from Canalys, global tablet shipments are on the rise, up 5.6% year over year in Q2 of 2024, totaling 147.6 million units for the entire year, which is an overall 9.2% increase over 2023, with growth in all regions except North America. Apple's iPad line still in the top spot with 14% growth. Samsung comes in at number 2, shipping 7.1 million units and recording 3.9% annual growth. However, Chinese tablet makers making significant ground, gaining really, with Xiaomi up 73% over 2023 and Huawei up 29%.
South Korea's industry ministry has temporarily blocked employee access to Chinese AI startup DeepSeek over security concerns, joining other government agencies like the Defense and Foreign Ministries in restricting its use. State-run Korea Hydro and Nuclear Power and tech companies like Kakao, SK Hynix, and Navier have also imposed limits on generative AI services. The move follows similar bans in Australia, Taiwan, and Italy as global regulators scrutinize DeepSeek's privacy and security practices.
Spanish police have arrested a man in the city of Alicante for allegedly carrying out 40 cyber attacks on major organizations, including NATO, the U.S. Army, and Spain's Ministry of Defense. Using multiple aliases, the suspect is said to have accessed and then leaked sensitive data, some of which was sold on hacking forums. Authorities tracked him down with help from Europol and U.S. Homeland Security, seizing computers and 50 cryptocurrency accounts. If convicted, he faces up to 20 years in prison under Spanish law. That's the maximum.
OpenAI has made ChatGPT's search feature available to everyone, no login required. Originally launched for paid users in October and later expanded to all logged-in users, ChatGPT search provides web-based results with citations, putting it in direct competition with Google and Bing. This move signals OpenAI's push to challenge traditional search engines and expand its reach.
All right, so OpenAI and Google Gemini and Claude from Anthropic, all very well-known LLMs that cost a lot of money to produce. So this next story, kind of interesting. Researchers from Stanford and the University of Washington have developed something called S1. This is a new AI model with really impressive reasoning skills in math and coding, rivaling those top-tier models. But what makes S1 stand out is its low training cost, and I mean low, under $50 in cloud compute credits. This is, that's unheard of. The team achieved this using something called distillation. We've talked about this before in the past. It's a technique where S1, or any model, learns from an existing AI model, in this case, Google's AI model. To encourage further research, they've made S1 and its data and its code available on GitHub to anybody for free. The breakdown shows how distillation can make AI development more affordable and obviously accessible, but potentially by speeding up innovation in the field, you're also going to upset some larger corporations who have put a lot of effort into this. Google itself has not commented on this particular research, which used it analyzed answers from Google's Gemini 2.0 flash thinking experimental model. Using about 1,000 curated questions and answers, the researchers were able to train S1 in a really short amount of time, like half an hour, using 16 H100 GPUs. Yes. Yeah. So, not that this is, the whole operation and research cost more than $50, but the $50 was cost to pretty much siphon information from another model, which anybody could do, really, if you wanted to, at least at this point. Researchers were able to enhance reasoning capabilities. They got kind of clever, asking each process to wait so that the model had a little bit more time to think about the best response rather than the fastest response, which is interesting. So I thought I would just open it up to the group here today. We've got models that are expensive to run. Let's use anything OpenAI does just as an example because it gets a lot of press and it costs a lot of money, and we all know this. Models like something S1 is, which again, research project, but it's real. This needs that initial model to do anything. You can't distill from nothing. You have to distill from the model that you're pulling from, which, if all goes well, is more or less the same information. Maybe it works a little slower, maybe it's not, quite as good at certain tasks, but it's more or less the same information.
I mean, you want to be careful because they're not copying the model and just
right.
They're finding out what that model does for certain questions and queries and prompts and what it gets in return and bases it off that. So, I mean, DeepSeek is the big one that everyone kind of like looks at in terms of a distillation and being able to come up with a comparable large language model that can compete, at least with the big names currently in the field. I mean, you're going to see a lot more of this, frankly. I mean, this is not a one-off or a two-off or even like a half dozen off. This is going to be an ongoing thing because with the amount of money invested in AI, there are a few areas where people compete on a straight dollar basis with with OpenAI, with Anthropic or Gemini from Google. So why not just compete on value? So why don't we try to make it as cheap as possible, as accessible as possible, so you're not necessarily needing to subscribe to these other tool sets, which are just as valuable, but maybe you can get by with the Kirkland version instead of the name brand version.
That is a great analogy, because here's the thing. If you are Google, if you're OpenAI, if you're Anthropic, if you are putting all the resources, all the money, all the stuff that goes into doing this first, just to have somebody else come and distill your large language model for $50 in compute, you're not going to be very happy about that. So I'm beginning to wonder. We still need to see some real metrics. I want to see, what does OpenAI have to say about this? I want to see what Google has to say, and Perplexity. I want to see what these other companies that are doing it the expensive way, what they're ultimately going to say about this, probably in a not too distant future. But I think the battle is going to be fought with these distilled models, because here's the thing: even if they're not, on a scale of 1 to 10, everything that we've been hearing is that, well, if the model that they were distilled from was a 10, these are like 9.8. They're really good. They're really good models. If they're really good, but they cost that much less to create, I think that anyone who is not a Google, that is not an OpenAI, that is not one of these big giant software companies, or AI companies, they're going to use the distilled models because it's just so much cheaper and you get the same bang for the buck. At some point, there's going to be diminishing returns and actually using all that compute power to generate your own model, when you could just use a lot less and distill someone else's model.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many. The Kirkland comparison is a good one. I was thinking earlier about, an expensive handbag, right? You get your Louis Vuitton handbag. It costs astronomical cost, but it's the best, right? And some people buy that, and then some people buy a knockoff. Now, the knockoff, if Louis Vuitton wants to, I don't know, if they can figure out who made that knockoff, they can go after them, and they do. But they exist, and for someone like me, who's like, I'm not spending $3,500 on a handbag. There's sort of that option. Does it really? Do I feel like it's less than? I mean, I guess there's a little bit of that going on, but that's like a tangible brand thing. When it comes to information, if I get the same information from the original model and the distilled model that cost a lot less to give me that same information, like let's say I'm asking about the Roman Empire, right? Because I think about the Roman Empire every day, like everybody else does. If I get the same information from both, well, the initial company is going to be pretty annoyed that I can get it elsewhere, but it's information. It's not a brand. It's not a thing.
They could go after them for violation of terms of service.
Yeah.
But what if you're dealing with non-known entities that have like some sort of gray market, version of a model that, maybe if a bunch of people just needed something that isn't very privacy sensitive, like, hey, what time does the open Winchell, are there any Winchell donut stores up? What time do they close, and what parts of the neighborhood can I get, best get access to it? I mean, that's all they need. And what's interesting is I saw this on a subreddit, on an AI subreddit somewhere. But someone says, like, the idea is that if you aren't a big player, you just let these big companies plow all the resources into and invest into all the research and stuff, and then you just come in after them and just distill a model from it. It's like, yeah, it might not be the best, but it's the best enough for most people who only want to spend like $5 a month or less.
I wonder if we're going to start to see legislation on changes in the ways that information can be copyrighted. It can be, trademark. I'm just wondering, because it's like, well, we had to spend $1 billion to get what took you $50 to get. And you're 99.8% of what we are. That is very, very problematic. So I'm wondering if laws are going to be changed because of that.
I will say for certain there will be laws, and there will be new guidelines or at least terms of service. Like if they find you, catching you doing something, for example, how VHS tapes used to have that little logo from the FBI that says this, videotape is copyrighted. Don't
you copy this tape? Also very easy to do, and the FBI never knocked on my door.
And I mean, that's the risk. You're a disruptor. You're disrupting the industry. You really can't be too upset when someone comes around and disrupts your original model for making money.
Oh,
Yeah, that's a
you
good
can be
point.
upset. I just don't know what your I don't know what your recourse is. They're upset. I'm certain that OpenAI is upset about what's happening to them right
I
now.
mean, yeah. I mean, and it's this is the thing. At some point, all of this is going to be so widely available that the only way to become, or at least to stand out from the crowd, is to make a product that is unique. And I think having these broad-based LLMs is the initial phase, but really what's going to make the money is more tailored, specific, narrow-banded LLM,
Right.
like, the Sarah LLM, which will be basically like, hey, if Sarah from 25 years ago, what would you do if you had the same opportunity? Would you take it? Blah, blah, blah. You would ask yourself questions, maybe therapy. I don't know.
Right. But even then, I mean, unless it was private and
Yeah.
not available to the public, it's like somebody can distill me.
Oh, yeah. I mean, exactly. So,
You know,
it's,
I mean, data scraping is, this is just, it's kind of, we're just in a modern area of this.
this is just one can of worms amongst many wormy cans that will be opened in the coming several, or at least half dozen years. I can bet on it.
Yep. If I were a betting man, I would agree on the wormy cans. All right, Rob, you have been looking into the story of Microsoft trying to build something like a Facebook feed for organizations of inside Microsoft Teams. So is this going to help folks? Are they going to use it?
So Microsoft, what they decided to do is that they're going to continue to build Facebook-like social media platforms for the workplace. They're testing a new feature called Storyline within Microsoft Teams. This feature allows users to post and interact with content in a Facebook-style feed where colleagues can share updates, announcements, and congratulate each other on achievements. Now, last week we talked about how LinkedIn has become much more of a social media platform than merely a place to upload your resume and look for employment opportunities. But interestingly, Storyline isn't built on top of LinkedIn's framework, but Microsoft's Viva Engage platform, which replaced Yammer, Microsoft's previous workplace social app, and it will be integrated directly into the main Teams interface. Users will be able to follow colleagues, interact with posts, and even access profile analytics through paid Teams premium features. So if there's one thing you can say about Microsoft, unlike Google, who will shut down a product that's hot that people are using because it's Thursday, Microsoft will if they get an idea, they're going to run with that idea until they run it into the ground, maybe for decades. In the case of Yammer, it's been decades that they've been trying to get this to work. So I think that there's two things that has happened. Why Yammer now, what are we calling it now? Like I said, they've changed the name a couple times. So it was Yammer. It's now Storyline. They're building this on top of Microsoft Engage platform, which is the rebranding of Yammer. But the problem, I think that they bought Yammer all the way back in 2012. It's like $1.2 billion. It was a huge deal when they did it. And they worked for half a decade. They worked 4 or 5 years trying to get Yammer to be the thing that people will use. And then what happened is that, everybody, said, Microsoft started building, on top of Skype for Business. They started building on top of Link. They ultimately came up with Teams. And that was a workplace collaboration tool that is doing extremely well inside of Microsoft. But people don't use that like a social media platform. They use it like a workplace collaboration tool. And so Yammer has just been stammering along. And, and I think what they're failing to realize is that people just don't want to use their work resources like a social media network. Facebook has failed with this. Facebook Workplace is going to shut down next year. If Facebook can't get people to use Facebook in the office, I'm questioning what Microsoft makes them going to think that they're going to get something that resembles what Facebook used to do, or Workplace in this case, inside of the office. So I don't know. If I were a betting person, I don't know that I would bet on this new tool, on Storyline being a big thing for Microsoft. But I will say this. Teams is absolutely massive. There are hundreds of millions of people who are using that platform. And if any place they're going to be able to get it to work, maybe that's it. I just don't know that I would bet on it.
Yeah. You mentioned Yammer. There was one, I can't remember what workplace it was, but there was one place that we were encouraged to collaborate with each other on Yammer, and it never clicked. Convo was another one I used to use that at TechCrunch. Actually, I don't know if they're still using it because I haven't been there in a while, but that actually worked pretty well. It was mostly, it was social in the sense that it was a feed and, you had threaded comments and that sort of thing. And sometimes it veered off course as far as people being more social than they were actually collaborating on work things. But it worked out well. Slack is another example of a network that was made for the workplace, but can be used all sorts of different ways. I get why Microsoft wants this to work, but I'm with you, Rob. I don't know how much this is something that's someone sitting there saying, all right, I'm part of Microsoft Teams. You know what I want? I want something that feels more like Facebook.
In the before times, one of my last corporate jobs that I had, I worked for an organization that was a big Facebook workplace user. In fact, we were so big that part of what we did as a company was build tools to enhance what you could do with workplace. And here's the thing. We were a company that based, everything was done inside of workplace from a work standpoint, and we didn't even use workplace for social media. There'd be a conversation happening and people would say, hey, moving to Threads. That was like a common thing. We would move not to Threads, move to Slack. That was a common thing that would happen inside of an organization that was building tools for workplace. So the reason was because, once again, we didn't want to, I can't talk for all organizations, but the organization that I was at, we just didn't necessarily want to mix work with pleasure. We, things that we were doing outside of work. So we would move over to Slack. Now, here's the thing. The Slack channel that was built wasn't an official Slack. It was somebody personally set up Slack. And that's where people in the company would have conversations because you could just be more relaxed. You weren't concerned about, is the company moderating what I'm saying? Are they are they looking at my messages, or did they look at the sweatshirt and that I was wearing that might have said something that the company wouldn't have approved of or something like that? So I just don't know that companies are ever going to get to where people are going to use their company platform like they would a social media platform. So I will give props to Microsoft. They had an idea. They're going to keep running this, but I just don't know that this is going to work.
I'm curious to know what the business case for this is, because most companies generally have a pretty strict policy about not using company resources for private
chatter.
things. Yeah, and we used that. I mean, it really came down pretty hard back at Tech TV after a couple of incidents about using emails for are using some of the tools that we had at work for non-work related things. Like, it just seems like most companies sort of discourage that behavior, and you're going to get a tool that would then encourage it. It seems very contradictory and at odds for any sort of large organization.
Even from the company standpoint, the company has liability for what goes on in those company, those company mandated or those company provisioned social media platforms. So you have to put rules. You can't say this. You can't wear this. You can't show these things. There's all these rules that go around the things you can't do. And it's so much easier that if you are a group of friends at an organization to just jump into Slack, and attend it that is not run by your company, to jump into WhatsApp, to jump into actual Facebook or actual Instagram, or whatever the case is, and just have your conversations there and not have to worry about what's going on at your employer.
What did we use? We used Dame, right? Wasn't that the big thing in ICQ at Tech TV, just to chat around with everyone? That was
I mean, there were
work.
certainly some emails that were being used for non-work things. Although this is also, it's so long ago. It's like everybody was a comedian on Lotus Notes back in the day, on a variety of teams. But yeah, it was pretty much instant messaging. Whatever app you were using, but it was mostly AIM or some skin of that. Now there are lots of options. I don't know. I'm going back to Slack just because I don't use Microsoft Teams, but I know that that they're competing products in some respects when it comes to that part of it. I'm on several Slack groups that are not work related at all. It's just like friend stuff. We just kind of moved off of an email thread, and we're like, you know what? Maybe we could have a few categories, of conversations, and it's actually worked out really nicely. But again, that's not work. I don't actually. No, that's not true. I do have a Slack channel that I use for work, not for us because we're on Discord, but But same idea. I mean, Discord, like they can all be the same thing. You can use it for, hey, we're going to talk about work, and here's how we're going to make sure that it doesn't go off the rails, or it could go off the rails. Anything that Microsoft makes has the potential to do the same thing.
Yeah, it's just. Yeah, I don't know. Like I said, we'll see. Maybe they will figure it out, because the thing that is different here is that teams in organizations is massive. I mean, it is very, very heavily used, but it doesn't really feel like social media. It feels like a workplace collaboration tool. It feels like SharePoint with a chat client on steroids, because that's ultimately what it is. And I know people who are really into Teams might say, well, Rob, it's so much more than that. Yes, it is. But what Teams does not feel like is social media. It's like you're not really following threads and doing all these kind of things that Yammer kind of did. And I think that's what they're going to be doing in storyline. So we will see if it will work. But my thing is that, the tools are there. You wouldn't keep rebranding and changing the name of stuff that was working. So ultimately, there's got to be a disconnect. People aren't using it. You have to figure out why they aren't using it. Not necessarily, well, let's just rename it and put it into something that's more popular. I don't know that that's the answer.
Be glad it's that, and they didn't try some variation of TikTok where you could only do those short vertical videos and you're sending it to your collaborate teammates and collaboration colleagues.
Yeah.
I mean,
so I know, like I said, when I worked for a company, I've actually worked for several companies that had, stuff internal that was supposed to, approximate a social media network. And one of the most common messages was moving to whatever other thing that was not provisioned by your employer, because you just didn't want to take any chances that you're having a conversation that the employer would have to come back and have an HR conversation with you about.
Gossip channels need to be off company, off the company infrastructure.
Rob, last Thursday on Yammer, and I think the timestamp is 12:37 p.m. Let's talk about that. Nobody wants that.
Nobody wants that.
Well, we hope you want to be part of our subreddit, because that's where we get a lot of ideas for stories that end up on this show. What do you want to hear us talk about on the show? That is a good way to let us know. Submit stories and vote on them at reddit.com/r/Daily Tech News Show. It can seem that ransomware attacks are a constant threat for businesses. We hear about them all the time, and we know that companies end up paying ransoms because they want to get their data back. There are hopeful signs, though, that this might be turning a corner, right, Roger?
Yeah, so on Wednesday, the cryptocurrency tracing firm Chainalysis.
Yeah.
Terrible.
It's like analysis, but for chain.
It's a little too clever, in my opinion, but that's neither here nor there. Released a portion of its 2025 crime report focusing on ransomware. It found that the total amount of extortion payments dropped from 1.25 billion in 2023 to just 814 million in 2024, a drop of 35%. Now, in the same period from July through December 2024, extortion payments of just 320, there was just a amount of 321 million payments to extortion ransomware, which was a drop from 492 million over the same period in 2023. And what's interesting is one of the big impacts was law enforcement basically making the crime a lot more risky. For example, in late 2023, like 6 days before Christmas, the FBI found vulnerabilities in the encryption of ransomware group used by Black Hat and Alpha 5 and distributed the decryption keys to all the victims so they could decrypt it without having to pay out the ransomware to these groups. And then in February 2024, the UK's National Crime Agency, which is similar to the FBI in a way, carried out an operation against the notorious ransom group Lockbit. Now, it hijacked their infrastructure and it seized the cryptocurrency wallet so they wouldn't be able to monetize any of the ill-gotten gains that they had. So I find it very interesting that within this period, we saw a good amount of relief in terms of the amount of money was paid. However, based on analysis done by Recorded Future, the number of attacks, that means the frequency, the number of people going and trying to do ransomwares actually went up. But the amount of money they wanted was far less than what traditionally were like these big hauls, like you must give us $2 million to unlock, all your customer data or whatever. And along with law enforcement pressures, enhanced awareness of the threat by corporations and organizations, so they actually do take security seriously, was also key. Now, Brett Callow from the FTI consulting, security consulting, said that a lot of these attacks tend to ebb and flow, and they come, for example, if there's a string of really good attacks, you'll see a lull. If you see a string of bad, no good attacks that didn't really gain them any money, you'll also see a lull. So this could just be part of that wave. It'll take a few more years of recording the numbers and looking back to kind of see what the trends are looking long term. But so far, it seems to be a positive for organizations. But the head of the intelligence analysis at Chainalysis, Burns Coven, adds that it really means that people just need to be aware and need to be committing to those security measures. It's not like, oh, well, the threat's receding, we don't do anything. It's like you got to make sure your door's locked. You got to make sure you have some sort of backup of the data just in case something happens. You want to take mitigation measures. And I think I think it's finally sinking in that, this stuff is expensive and an ounce of prevention is worth $200 million in cures.
Yeah.
I think, Roger, one of the things that this report mentioned was that companies are just not willing to pay the ransom. They're just, no, we're not going to pay you. We'll just fix our system. And I think that goes hand in hand with organizations being more situationally aware of, it's not about, if you're going to get hacked. It's about when you're going to get hacked and how do you mitigate how do you mitigate, what happens when you do. So you're starting to see to where we got hacked. It's really, really bad. But here's our plan of how we're going to get out of this. And we're not going to give these people $1, but we're going to put the FBI on them to go after them with all their fervor. And I think that's a part of what's happening. We've even heard of organizations that literally had shadow secondary networks, so that if we get hacked here, we've got this other network that's basically running 2 weeks ago that we can bring up and get back up and going pretty good. So I think that companies are really starting to change their posture on, well, we're going to do these things to prevent ourselves from getting hacked. And now it's like, here's the things we're going to do when we get hacked. They're just changing their posture, and I think that's changing the behavior of not just the companies themselves, but ultimately the hackers. Because at some point you just know that if I'm not going to get anything from this company, it really doesn't make point to try to get anything from the company if they are just not going to deal with us.
And with the number, and this is the thing, 2024 saw a record number of attacks. So, ransomware isn't just for large companies. You could be a medium or even a small size business that could be ripe for attack, and you do have to take security. It's not a thing that conglomerates or multinational companies have to worry about. Everyone who has an online presence, who has some sort of data retention scheme online, you need to think about it, because eventually that someone's going to be desperate or just dumb enough to try taking on a small business that may not have as much to give, but from a criminal's point of view, some money's better than none. So just you gotta go out with a security minded approach to all your data.
Yeah. I did think it was interesting that the data was that, yes, 2024 record number, but somewhere mid-year, it seemed to not fall off a cliff, but definitely, trend downward. And, so it's like, again, it's like we've got, I don't know, law enforcement being better at figuring out what's going on here. And there are a few other factors, but I think also a lot of companies being like, no, we're not playing this game.
And I forgot to add, but additionally, there legislation and regulation around things like cryptocurrency, where you do have a set of rules that people can all right, we're going to do this, that makes them less susceptible to these kinds of attacks, to these kinds of extortion schemes. And really, it is both a legislative, a law enforcement, but also proactiveness on the part of businesses that like play into it. It can't just be all law enforcement, just be all proactive. Has to be a sort of a confluence and a cooperative type of a situation. In order, I mean, you're never going to get rid of ransomware, but you can hopefully mitigate the amount of damage they can do to your corporation or business.
Well, let's talk about business, but in a different sense. Let's talk about middle management. So Bloomberg sources say that Amazon CEO Andy Jassy's effort to rein in Amazon middle management positions, which has been documented, has been going on since last year, has started rippling through the company, potentially raising fears about the prospect of those lean years ahead and fewer promotions for more experienced employees who would have expected them otherwise. Some career paths are said to be drying up. Some managers are reportedly worried they'll be replaced by lower paid people with less experience. You don't have to work in tech to be worried about that. And some have reportedly been told to pursue horizontal development, meaning you're not getting a promotion. Maybe you could get a different job in the company, but potentially not more
lateral,
money.
what we used to call a lateral movement.
Horizontal development, lateral movement, exactly. And Rob, I know on Daily Tech Headlines this morning, you reported that Sonos is laying off 12% of its workforce. It's about 200 employees to streamline its product teams going forward, improve efficiency. This follows the recent departure of CEO Patrick Spence after that poorly received app revamp that hurt the brand and sales. We've got interim CEO Tom Conrad now saying the company is just too layered. It's slowing collaboration, and they have to restructure to focus more on agile product development. Now, that's something that a boss would say. But I think Amazon and Sonos, two very different companies, but both companies that have stumbled on hardware. Amazon, a massive company. You have to assume that at some point, whether AI is taking people's jobs or not, and I know that is a factor in some situations. But I think you go through Amazon with a fine-tooth comb, and you can cut a lot of jobs without much changing. And I'm not saying that anybody there is just sitting around eating donuts all day. That's not what I'm saying. It's just sometimes the company gets so bloated that it doesn't know how to operate otherwise. And that's where the hard situations like these have to come in.
I want to talk about Sonos first, because I think that for them, it's pretty straightforward. That app debacle that they had was massive. People stopped buying Sonos stuff. That was very, very destructive to their bottom line. So this 12% reduction in force is probably trying to get back in line with where the company is now and not where it was before that app debacle that they had. Amazon, I think a couple things are going on here. Amazon is one of the one of the companies raising the flag about you will come back and work in the office 100% of the time. Mm-hmm. Andy Jassy has been flat out. It's like, if you don't like that culture, to go find another place where the culture is different. He's flat out saying things like this to people. I think this goes into part of it. It's like, we're going to, ultimately, we're going to have less people, at the end of the year than we have now. And one of the ways to do it is, I don't know that we're going to do middle management type of promotions. You can take that lateral move, or maybe you can do more work and make the same money and not make more for it. But we're not doing these promotions. And I think what they're going to see from that is a lot of people who will say, you know what, I don't want to be here. This is not the culture that I signed up for. I want to move on someplace else. And I think what Jassy and the board is kind of come to, that's what they're looking for. They want to do a layoff without actually having to do a layoff. If you lay off more than a certain percent of your employees, you have got to, by law, do certain types of things when it comes to severance. If somebody comes up and says, hey, I'm just not feeling it here anymore, I'm going to move on, you say, it was nice having you. See ya. Good luck in your next opportunity. You don't owe them anything other than, maybe their vacation and stuff like that, but you don't owe them severance unless it was something that was already negotiated in an exit contract or something.
Well,
like that.
And if they leave on their own accord, you don't fill the position.
Yeah.
Or
right,
you
exactly.
fill it with somebody who takes a lot less money.
Or you fold that division into another division, and now that division does twice the work with fewer people.
Yeah.
I mean, this is the thing. As there was a huge growth of employees. Rob and I were talking about this shortly before the show, that during the pandemic supercharged the hiring process, and we were like, scratching our heads like, was it just a rush to get bodies? So you had staff for things you didn't have yet, but you planned to do. And then, like, okay, now we can throw bodies at it. I just think this is part of the economic cycle where businesses are now like, okay, we are in a particular spot. We might be a little too human resource intensive right now. We have too many bodies. We might need to let them go. The kind of to come back to the office orders are part of that to kind of thin it, but also kind of diminishing the opportunities for people to advance in the business, is another one. And I mean, all companies go through this. It's not that companies can grow forever. Despite the hype, companies do not grow forever. IBM can tell you that, and when they went through a very soft period in the 80s and 90s. And this is just part and parcel of how these companies operate. I think at some point what you'll see is a more depending on how this works out for them, you might see other companies follow a similar tactic with their workforce as well.
Yeah, I mean, if you can save money, a company will save that money.
Yeah,
if there's a direct way to save money, that is what the company is going to do. I think the pandemic, the early 2020 to, let's call it 2022. I know that there a lot of folks are still reeling from that, but that was a special circumstance because you had companies saying, well, hold on a second, life has just radically changed overnight. Everybody's home, people buying tablets like crazy. Like let's hire a bunch of developers. That is all something that has, not totally flattened out, but it spiked and then it fell. And you had a lot of people who were hired and then fired as a result. I think the situation with Amazon and Sonos, you can't compare I guess you compare them. You can compare them on some of their products, but very, very different companies. Amazon's,
massive.
a monstrosity, right? Sonos is not a huge company, although it does have, I think it's around 1,000 employees, even without the 200 employees that I guess are losing their jobs, in Santa Barbara, and they both are companies that have been around for a while. Obviously, Amazon goes way back, but I don't think, the pandemic stuff is a whole other conversation. What Amazon, I think, is doing is, this is Andy Jassy being like, all right, I'm at the helm. I've been at the helm for a while. Who are all these people? What are they doing? Can't we do, get from point A to point B with 3 people instead of 30? And I have worked in corporations before where, not that I didn't have a job and I didn't have things to do, but working in quote unquote middle management, I was like, yeah, this could all be done better. But there was a machine. You had to respect the machine and you kind of play the game. And I think a lot of people do that thinking that, well, you stick around long enough and then you get a promotion. Once that isn't happening anymore, even if you don't lose your job, but if you're at Amazon and you're like, all right, I've been here for a while, what's next? And they're like, lateral move, I don't know. We don't really know what else to tell you. That is going to make a lot of people think about jumping ship. Now, whether or not there's a better place to jump to is a whole other conversation because the tech force is a little crazy right now.
It's there will be some point down the future where Amazon goes through another hiring bitch and they'll do another cleaning out phase as well. And it's Amazon and Sonos are alike in this both respect. They're both impacted by market forces. If the market isn't there for the products, the revenue goes down. Well, you don't need all these people because you're paying out salaries for not enough return on investment. And so, this is the thing for the tech world. This might be kind of new, but for every other corporate environment, whether you're talking about the auto industry, you're talking about the financial industry, real estate industry, this is kind of what happens. And if you're not ready for it, it can catch you by surprise. But I have a feeling that so most of these employees might have a better line on what they can do next versus people who might just sort of come out one day and find they're locked out of their office.
Yeah, I don't necessarily subscribe to Andy Jassy's management style, but clearly he has decided that, you know what, we need to do a culture reset here. We got a little bit off kilter during the pandemic, and now we're going to reset that. And, when you think about what Amazon is one of the biggest logistics company on the planet, they have people who can count really well. So someone has done the math and said, so if we make everybody come back to work 5 days a week, how many are going to quit? Okay, we won't need to do a layoff here. If we don't do massive promotions for our middle management, how many of them are going to move on? Okay, we don't need to do layoffs there. And if they can do it, if they make that decision, we're going to reset our culture. We're going to go back to 5 days in the office. We're going to go back to, these middle people are not going to be getting these massive salary increases, and it helps us reset our numbers to get in line with where we want to be. Let's do that because it's less costly than doing a actual layoff that we have to report to the report to the government. So I think that's kind of what's going on here. This is Andy Jassy saying we are going to reset our culture and get back to where we feel like we need to be, as compared to all the employees who don't want to come into the office, all the middle management who want the 20-25% raises that they used to get. We're just not doing that anymore.
I will caution this, that, and oftentimes when a company goes too far down this path, they often lose some resiliency, right? You don't have enough strategic depth and manpower to take care of any kind of black swan event where, one of your offices gets hit by a flu and then you need to fill in all these spots because people are out sick. I mean, there's a line you have to weave, and if you go too far one way, you could find yourself on the wrong side of it.
The companies almost always do. They almost always do, which was going to make them overhire again to fix it, and then they'll be back in the situation in another. But that is for a 2029 episode when it actually happens again.
I would say 2026.
2029. That would be nice. I think we'll be talking about this before then. Well, thank you to everybody who helps with feedback for our show so that we know what resonates with you, such as the folks that contribute to our mailbag.
So Dylan had thoughts on our Sonos discussion yesterday in about brand name versus quality. And he writes, I have consistently purchased Bose headphones over multiple decades. When I made my first purchase, it was primarily on the company's reputation for sound quality, and I was not disappointed. When I upgraded first to noise canceling, then to wireless, I continued to pay a premium for Bose because they proved to be a real world example of Vimes boots. They had higher quality, but stood up to my daily use over several years without failure and any diminishing sound or quality concerns. So the cost over the lifetime of each headphone pair was much less than I would have spent on other brands. I purchased new ear pads when they wear out, and that tends to take 1 to 2 years, for the replacement cost only being $15 to $30 a pair. I tried to make my purchase based on value, not the name. Bose has delivered significant value on my purchases. The fact that I don't need to use a mediocre app to use my headphones only increases the value, in my opinion.
Oh, man. I remember when I got my first pair of Bose noise canceling headphones. This was, I don't know, 2004? I mean, this was like a birthday gift type thing for me. I was, it was expensive. And it was sort of like, ooh, Bose headphones. Then I left them in a rental car, and they were not returned to me because whoever found them in the rental car was like, I didn't see your Bose headphones. So, good luck to you, sir. But yeah, I'm with you on this, Dylan. I think a lot of us, especially when it comes to tech products, it's cool to have a brand name, I guess. I mean, I know I pay a premium for some of my Apple products. I also think that Apple is the company I want to spend money on. It's not for being like flashy and cool. I also think in the age that we're in technology, think about Bose headphones. It's like Bose headphones are still good headphones, but you read any audio files like best headphones you can buy, and it's never Bose. It's other stuff. So it's a personal decision. You might like something for a very specific reason that someone else doesn't like, and you make your financial purchase based on what's best for you.
I am a Bose fan. I have a pair of Bose. In fact, I'm on my third pair of Bose. I probably replace them about every 4 years or so. And I'm getting to the end of the pair that I have now. In fact, I need to actually either replace one of the ear pads or get some new headphones. But it's like, okay, do you go spend $300-$400 or do you spend $25? I'm with Dylan on maybe spending the $20 to $35 because they sound absolutely wonderful. There's nothing wrong with them. They're just, I think I got them in 2019.
And I would caution to say that there are brand names that are quality, and there's some brand names that are budget conscious, and there are certain models within Sony's headphone lines that I think aren't worth the money, but they have some really good professional headphones, the MDR or the 75-9. I think you have them on your head, Sarah. That are great. I've had a pair for over 25 years or so. Only thing I've ever had to replace was the earpads because my ears have worn them out.
They start to go, because you're wearing them all. Well, but if you wear them all day, every day, which I do. Yeah, I have like 4 pairs of these. They're great.
They're super durable. They sound great, and they get even for audio editing. So, it's finding what works for you, and more importantly, what works for the job you need it for them, or what you need the job. What type of job you need them for. Thank you.
Yeah. I mean, like anything, sometimes you get what you pay for, right? Sometimes you pay top dollar for the thing that's the best. And other times you say, you know what? I think it's just more of the brand.
I paid $19 for these headphones. They're great. The ear pad replacements I got for them cost more than the headphones. And these are these cheapo mono price ones, but they're perfect for the show. They're light, and during the summer, they don't bake my ears.
Oh yeah, I mean, go to a fitness club sometime. It's like you have all these people decked out, and I'm like, but we're all just sweating. I'm not buying that expensive cute outfit for the gym. No, you're seeing me in a t-shirt and some shorts. That's what's happening here. Anyway, again, it's all relative, and we do want to have your feedback coming, whether it's about Bose headphones or what you wear to the gym or anything in between. Remember, send in your comments. Feedback at dailytechnewsshow.com.
So during the show, we've been submitting titles over at dtns.showbot.tv, and we've got some good ones for you that folks are voting on. So let's start off with Saray TW submits creating distilled models is half the battle.
Oh, go battle.
Zoe brings bacon has Sarah LLM coming soon.
Yeah.
Sarah Bot.
Don't you take my LLM, anybody.
I will sign up for it. Stealth Dave has risky ransomware business.
I like that.
Stealth Dave also has an AI by any other name. Let's see here. Larry in Atlanta, knock off AI. Stealth Dave has who disrupts the disruptors.
Oh.
And then JPEG 84, being social has its workplace limits.
Yeah, who does disrupt the disruptors? It's like we just
the new disruptors.
Yeah, and then those disruptors are mad at the new disruptors, and then it's like this LLM cost 1 cent.
Remember, we called them startups, and we give them millions of dollars in angel and venture capital.
Indeed, we did.
So yeah, we got a lot of votes. There's 65 votes over there. But Sarah, what did we go with?
Well, Rob, I'm glad you asked. Our title for today comes from Sarah TW. Creating distilled models is half the battle.
G.I. Joe. I love it.
Real American hero. And thanks to everybody for voting or submitting and voting. The other day, okay, so I know that we all watched G.I. Joe in some form. We had to have, or had the toys. I never had the toys, but I did watch the cartoons.
You never had the G.I. Joe with the Kung Fu grip, Sarah?
No, I was more like Barbie at that age, but
the
I would
Barbie
watch any
with the
cartoon
Kung Fu
you put in
grip
front
was
of me.
pretty cool too.
Well, after school, it was like, if you're with like more than a few kids, sometimes we watch what we're watching. So we watched a lot of G.I. Joe, but I had forgotten that before and after the commercial, it would be like, G.I. Joe wants to make sure you don't start a fire,
Yeah.
And the more you know kind of thing. And, and I had forgotten that part of G.I. Joe where it was like, this is, it's like a, I don't know, police military program, but also we're trying to help kids. Yeah,
it was specifically to meet a federal requirement that children's television have to have so many minutes dedicated to educational content, and that PSA counted as educational content.
As educational content.
So if you ever see yourself next to a strange dog, don't go try to pet it. Right? That was one of the lessons. Is like,
see, yes. So I was trying to remember and a friend of mine was like, remember the one about downed power lines? You're not supposed to touch them. I was like, I don't remember that.
I live in a neighborhood with buried utilities. What power line?
I mean, I don't think I ever saw a downed power line and tried to touch it, but I do think I remember one about like, if you're playing hide and seek, you never hide in a refrigerator.
Yep.
Because you won't be able to open it and they won't find you. And that's, that doesn't end well.
The smoke of the bear. Only you can prevent a forest fire. It's like, only me? I'm not. That's a lot of responsibility.
The oddest one I remember.
Me alone? Gosh, wow.
The oddest one I remember was the one where the kid is spray painting his bicycle. Like he's going to paint it a new color, but he has the garage door closed and he's coughing and choking and can't get out.
I remember that one.
And then like a G.I. Joe, I think it was like airtight, sticks his head through like the window, which obviously must be open, so there must be some ventilation. It's like, you can't do that. You're going to suffocate. Open the garage door.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Good times.
So many lessons learned. So many lessons learned.
Yeah, Generation X kids, the commercials and the PSAs we got because our parents were actually out working and doing stuff, and we were home a lot by ourselves a lot of the time.
Until my 20s, I associated drugs and fried eggs.
Oh, wow.
Oh, for sure. Oh, yeah. In fact, okay, this is another thing I said to some. I was like, "This is your brain on drugs," and they were like, "What?" I'm like, the eggs. I swear, this person looked at me like, "What are you saying? What is that string of words that you're saying?" I'm like, "The commercial about not doing drugs because it's going to fry your brain." That was, I don't know how effective it was, but I mean, we all saw that.
I sold a lot of eggs, I'm sure.
Yeah. Well, yeah. The eggs looked good.
I know. Speaking of good eggs, I like to say a shout out to everyone on Twitch that's been supporting us. We have Chicagory, who cheered us on with 100 bits. Hockey Sticks, who resubscribed with Prime. They've been subscribed for 38 months. Zoe Brings Bacon for cheering us on with bits as well. And I want to give a special shout out to Philip Less, who gave us a super chat on today's show, $20. Thank you so much.
If you are a DTNS supporter, we'd love for you to show your support for us. We've got lots of good stuff at dailytechnewsshow.com/store. Pick up a mug, a t-shirt, a mouse pad with our new DTNS logo on it. They're great looking ways to support us and to support the show. Indeed. So once again, head over to DTNS, or I should say dailytechnewsshow.com/store.
And that new design looks pretty sweet.
The next time I work from home, so I don't go to cafes as much as I used to. But the next time I see somebody with a DTNS live mug, I'm going to buy you a donut.
No, you should take a picture with them, a selfie, and then we.
Well, sure, I'll do that too. But it's like I'm trying to encourage them to get something out of it. I was like, I'll give you $20, but it's like, well, you already bought the mug, so yeah, I'll do something else. I don't know. I'll be happy. It would be great. It's always nice to see our merch out in the wild. It's lots of fun and reminds us that y'all live everywhere across the world. So thank you so much for your support. Reminder, we do the show live Monday through Friday at 4 p.m. Eastern at 2100 UTC, which means we are doing the show tomorrow. You can find out more at dailytechnewsshow.com/live. Speaking of tomorrow, Len Peralta will be back with us, drawing the top tech stories. Hope to see you then.
The DTNS family of podcasts, helping each other understand.
Diamond Club hopes you have enjoyed this program.